Thank you for joining me tonight. My name is George Dole, and this is my TED Talk audition tape on how to get an A in algebra in any school in California or just about any school in the United States. I want to demonstrate the idea of remembering something, knowing something only 75% if you know new idea. So two ideas here. If you learn something and you do remember the maximum amount, 75%, this is what's happened in LA Unified School District. Students take the test and maybe they get the highest amount of a grade, 75%, because they've learned as much as they can with new ideas. But they don't get a chance to repeat the class. So the next time they take a test, they're going to get 75% of this, which is 56%. 3/4 of 3/4. And then it just gets worse with every test. And you'll see that in my results that I'll show. But if you retest students and they get 75% the first time, and you retest them, they kind of know this, and then they get 75% theoretically of the 25% they got wrong the first time. They could get up to 94%. And I'll show those results in my charts that I have here. So this is the idea that we were taught in the first monthly teachers meeting for new teachers at LAUSD. And it works great. They tell us to repeat in the class, but they never told us that we could actually repeat the tests. Some people now do some of the quizzes. I do the test. It's less time consuming and more effective. I returned to my classes invigorated after the monthly meeting, although it disturbed me to think that most of my effort was wasted on children, some of whom counted on their fingers after each chapter quiz. After each chapter, we gave a quiz and also 4 quarterly tests. By Christmas, I had 7 A's, 26 B's, 49 C's, 32 D's, and 16 F's, which is this. Kind of like a normal distribution of grades. But when I started out, they pretty much took that away from me. So I had people that were, at best, mediocre, and at worst, just bad math students. My subsequent PTA meetings were relatively calm, and some of the parents actually apologized for their outburst to me in the first PTA meeting. Then in mid-December, my fiancée, Irina, told me that she was returning to Moscow to live permanently since the economy in Russia at that time in 2005 had improved dramatically. At that point, I decided to move to Moscow to live and marry Irina. I could have stopped retesting my students since I would not ever teach again in LAUSD, so my performance in this course would be really mean nothing to me or to them. However, the survey researcher background of mine was curious to see how far I could improve my students. I kept retesting all D and F students and got continuously improved results. The spring final grades in June for all my students surprised me. Test number 1 in January, mean average 77. Test number 2, mean average 78. Test number 3, 77 mean average. Test number 4, 82. The final cumulative mean average for all 121 students who started with me in September 2005 was 78. The median midpoint grade was 79, and with the mode with the most highest occurring score was 85. So fall semester grades, fall semester grades for tests. Spring semester grades. I have a chart to put these both together. Spring semester grades. Mean, mode, and median. Average mean, 78. Median, 79. Highest frequency of grades, 85. 7 students got 85. Okay, when I nominated one of my highest ranking students, 97%, for the Stephen M. White Award, for one of the highest scoring algebra students. One of my colleagues asked me if I really had any A students. I said yes. Don't you? That's when I first realized that the other three teachers probably had no A or B students in the classes. Here in Moscow, oh, I forgot to tell you I'm in Moscow. Here in Moscow, most Russian state universities allow retesting for students. So I never had a retest in any test in any course I ever had, but they allow it here, especially if it's a very hard course and people have the curve is very low. Ironically, the lowest scoring student was best friends with one of the highest scoring students. I asked the student why he did not do any homework or participate in class, even though anyone could see that he was above average in intelligence. He said that he had a lot of family problems and asked me if I wanted to know what these problems were. He said that kind of sarcastically. I said I was only a math teacher and that there were counselors and psychologists on campus for him to talk to. I apologized that I could not do any better than that suggestion for him. When graduation time rolled around, I participated in the graduation ceremony, but felt sad that I had only let F and D students retest. I should have let anyone retest, even A students. Question: would you like to have a cardiologist operating you on your damaged heart with only a 91 or 98 in anatomy and physiology? I'd like the 98 myself. So parents, if you live in California or any state that allows retesting students, you should demand that the teachers in your children's schools do so. Realize that the teachers are unionized and the principal is part of the management, so he or she has very few tools he can use to force the teachers to do anything that they don't want to do. Even if you're in a state that does not allow retesting, I can't see why you can't ask the administrator, top administrator, to do so. I don't think you need a law, you just have to need permission. You have two options parents to help your children get better math education. First, go to the PTA meetings and pressure math teachers to retest children and give them the better of the two grades, which almost always is the retest grade. When I retested, I told the students, you had to show me the work. If you just say the answer again, forget it. You have to show the work. I see the work, I give you partial credit. Usually, almost always, the retest was a higher grading test. So if they show the work, nobody can memorize algebra. I did a thorough evaluation, going over of the test, but I don't think anybody, especially these kids, could not memorize algebra. I can't memorize algebra. I can understand concepts, which is what I taught. But if you understand the concepts, objective classes, you remember it probably almost for life. Subjective things like English and history and psychology, sociology, takes a little more time to develop. Writing, but math, if you know 2 + 2 is 4, nobody can tell you otherwise. The other thing you can do, second, if teachers won't retest and the school district allows you to relocate your children to a school that explicitly and actively allows retesting, then you should do so. As the well-known Scottish economist Adam Smith noted in The Wealth of Nations, when a teacher's wages are connected to their performance, you almost always see improved teacher and student performance. Principals, you are like the sports coaches who are scapegoated for poor performance in schools. Although you can't force teachers to retest students, you can use my results at Stephen M. White Middle School to demonstrate that only retesting nature tests can greatly improve almost any child's performance in objective courses like math, physics, chemistry, and biology. Good luck. Children, if your school is allowed to retest by permission of your school superintendent, you should use this retesting tool to avoid getting an F or D and possibly earn a B or an A. Good luck for you. Teachers, you may think that retesting will involve a lot of uncompensated time to do this. Just ask students to show all your work, and you will to show you all the work, and after every thorough review of the test you give. You will see immediate and significant results at any point in your class, September, December, January, or even May. If you don't love your students enough to believe that they can do quality work given a second chance, then at least care about them a little to give them this second chance. If you don't care if your students do well or poorly, then probably you should find a new occupation and not ruin the lives of young teenagers who are affected very negatively whenever they unnecessarily get a D or F grade. Good luck. I say good luck because Seneca, 2,000 years ago, said luck is when opportunity meets preparedness. I've given you some tips as to how you can improve your students' grades, whether you're a parent, a student, teacher, or administrator. One last comment. In my class, just before graduation, one of my female students, she was one of the A students, asked me if I would miss my algebra students. I was unprepared for the question, and I don't quite remember what I said. I probably was polite and said, as a reflex answer, that I would miss them, but in retrospect, they retaught me what Charles Swindoll said many years ago. Attitude is the most important one-string instrument we have to play. These kids had no reason to do well in class, but I showed them that they could do well. 13 years old, quadratic formula, just, there's no reason for them to know this stuff. But they did it because they saw they could do it, and some of them wanted to do well. And I was really surprised. They could not have anticipated which student would have been excellent students and which one wouldn't. So, okay, so it's just, you have to give the kids a second chance. A couple of quick charts that I made, and I'm in Moscow. Unfortunately, my office package was a cracked English version, so I could not do a lot with my Excel programs. So I showed you the spring semester test grades and the fall semester test grades. Show that again. I'm going to put these two together. I did. When I put them together, you get this. Two normal distribution curves. One is actually skewed higher. The blue one is the fall semester, which looks kind of normal, but remember they took that away from me, so I rebuilt that. And the red one is skewed higher. Its mean is higher than the fall. These are all the same students that stayed with me the whole year. I did not include students that left or came late, or ones that left were out of the cohort. But these are all the students that stayed with me. So if they stayed with me, they did better in the second semester than they did in the first. And you can see my Fs went from 16 Fs to 5 Fs. I only had one failing student in each class. My Ds went from 32 to 20, 25. My Cs went from 50 to 35. Now that's below the midpoint. Bs went from 26 to 34. As went from 7 to 19. Very dramatic improvement. So also in the midpoint, you can see by putting the grades from low to high, this is failing. This is 60. And you can see, except for 5 people, everybody is above a D. And the parents, some of these parents were so happy just to get their kids a D so they could pass 8th grade formally, because you have to have only 2 or 3 failing grades in D to formally participate in graduation from 8th grade. They were so happy to get their kids at least above a D that only had 5 out of the 120 kids that failed, which is tremendous. I'm actually in a way more happier that I had only 5 Fs as opposed to more As, because it's great to have As, but it's also fantastic to reduce the number of Fs, because you have to train these people. These are people that are going to be running society for you and me as we get older. So I don't want everybody to be flipping hamburgers. I want people to have enough math ability to progress. And algebra 1 is the first place where they've hit some serious math, and which is going to be the foundation for all their other maths and programming. Now you have to be able to program. And it's nice to be able to understand algebra to be able to program effectively. Yes, kids 5, 6, 7 years old are programming, but they're not going to be, most kids are going to have some sort of math background to understand this. So put these charts together. Let's see if I need anything. I think I've covered just about everything here. I think I did. Oh, here are the tests. Here are the tests together in the back. So the red line is the fall semester. The average, as you can see, was kind of a little lower. But the last test for the fall was kind of high. But the average for all the students that stayed together with me, 71. The blue is the spring semester, which started out higher. We didn't get below 77. And then 77, 78, 77, 82, average 79. So you can see dramatic improvement with this, and it was my first year teaching a group of people in 20 years. I've never taught a large group of people, anything over a couple of kids at one time. So teaching 30, 35 kids at a time, algebra was a brand new experience for me. I knew the math well, and luckily had a math mentor to help me with this. And otherwise, it would have been a total disaster. It was like playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun, which is what I felt like it was for a while. Because as you can see, the line of the tests were going down. They were going down. Then, after I retested, they went up. So kind of dramatic. The second semester, kind of flat. Everything pretty good. Pretty good. I wonder what I would have had if I allowed C, B, and A students to retest. I probably would have had no Fs. I would have been able to drag out one person that didn't want to do work. Probably this is the spring semester final grades. I probably would have had no Fs. I would have had much fewer Ds and Cs, and I've had dramatically more Bs and As. This is already skewed high with Bs and As. So my mean average for this was 79. It was almost a B. The mean average for the whole group in June was 79. It's almost a B. Had I been able to retest C's and B's and A's, heck, let the A's retest. They're not going to get lower than an A anyway, so they'll even get better at it. And if I had been able to retest them, who knows what I would have been able to do. And I really wasn't as good as the other three teachers. They had years of experience, they really did teach well, but they wanted to have a life. So they didn't want to have to retest and spend 4.5 to 6.5 hours each test, which they weren't getting paid for. So what I would like to do is come back to the States and do a tour of 365 schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges with teachers, with teaching departments. And I have a couple of schools that thought I was actually in the States and they asked me to visit them. So I'm applying for fellowships, grants, so if anybody has any connections with that and can tell me about that. I'm also looking at getting fellowships and grants to be able to do a tour of schools in the States, even Alaska and Hawaii, if they can get me out there, to show that this is very dramatic results, and from a person who, I know math, and sometimes knowing the subject really well isn't a prerequisite for teaching it well. Although I have been teaching it since I was 13 to somebody every year, but not to a group of 13-year-old first-year puberty students in places that had gangbangers. I actually had gangbangers in my class who I was told to not get upset. So they could probably handle a Glock gun better than I can handle my mobile. Okay, so that's pretty much it, and I have an email. I believe it's, I didn't bring it with me. I believe it's getanalgebraa@gmail.com, but we will put something on the YouTube as the actual email, so that if you want to contact me with further questions, please do so. Okay, thank you very much, and as Seneca said, luck is when opportunity meets preparedness, so I've kind of prepared you now, so go out and fight for your kids. Great. Thank you very much. Good night.